Hey, it's John Klaus. I'm responding to Joshua Dorkin's request for Bigger Pockets members from biggerpockets.com to talk about their first deal. My first deal was my first real estate deal in the early 90s, probably the end of 1992. Of course, I was a newbie. I didn't have resources like there are so many today. I'd been to the book and I'd read a few books on real estate investing. I think one of them was one of Wade Cook's early books on buying houses on assumable mortgages and wrapping them to resell them to an owner-occupant buyer, which is what I was looking to do. So I had an agent looking for deals for me, and back then there was no web or internet, at least it was not widespread at all. So they had their book, and their book would come out, and she'd contact me if there was anything that looked good. And most of it did not look good, but then on one Friday afternoon she called me. She said there's one that was originally a 4-bedroom, 2-bath that had originally been priced at 69, had been languished at 69,000, dropped to 59,000 a couple of weeks before, and that day had dropped to 49,000. And she said the sellers were motivated and ready to go, so we went to look at it that evening, and it was in good shape. It really didn't need much at all. It was a bit dated, but in that price range, of course, that's what you expect. And it had brand new vinyl siding, had new nice vinyl double pane windows that were pretty highly insulated. And the reason they'd gotten those highly insulated windows is because the street they were on in Garland backed up to 635, which even back then was 8 lanes of high traffic, so pretty loud. And sure enough, those windows, insulated windows, kept the sound out pretty good. This house had an in-ground pool, which was unusual in that neighborhood, which was in okay shape. So I believe they did have a non-qualifying assumable note on it, and they owed probably like 36,000 on it. So I offered 48. They took the offer. So I had to come up with 12,000. I had about a third of that. I think I borrowed the rest from my brother and my sister and assumed that note of 36,000, which they'd been paying on for a while. So probably it was a 30-year note with like 12 years paid or so. So I found a buyer and wrapped the mortgage and got the buyer in there without doing much at all. I believe I probably sold, this is where I'm a little fuzzy on my memories, I think it was high 60s on the wraps. Let's say it was 69,000 or so. So I had some good margin on that, except I didn't screen my buyers all that well, and they were slow pay, and after about a year they got a divorce and they were no pay. So I thought, oh no, I've got to find out about my first foreclosure. Fortunately, I talked to my attorney and talked them into coming into his office and signing over deed in lieu of foreclosure, which that worked out right. I never thought it would. I never thought I'd get them in the same room, but they signed it back over to me. Well, went back out there. It definitely needed cosmetic rehab at that point. The big decision was the pool, what to do with it, because it was in bad shape. I thought about filling it in and covering it up, but I thought, no, I'll spend the money, I'll bite the bullet, and I'll bring it back to in shape. And it was, I believe it was spring going into summer, so it was a good time to sell a house with a pool. I did the rehab myself, paint and floors and some other cosmetics. I think there was a bit of foundation work too we had done. And I hired a pool company to fix the pool. Probably spent total, it was a lot to me back then, probably $7,000 or $8,000. It was all fixed. I listed it with the same agent who helped me buy it a year and a half before or so, and we found a buyer pretty quick, at an FHA buyer at $72,000. So my original purchase, $48K, my ultimate sale with a wrap and repo in between and some rehab, $72,000 to $48,000. Pretty good margin, and I was pretty happy with my first deal. So I got my feet wet and probably did, in the next year, 2 or 3 more deals, and then had a long hiatus until these last 2 years when I've been kind of in high gear. So Bigger Pockets, that's my first deal. It was a profitable deal, and it got me started.